That's right, back in action, Monday edition. It is Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason with the three biggest takeaways from the NFL Scouting Combine. Of course, the Combine wrapping up in Indianapolis, where one Andrew Mason was, and we learned a thing or two, more than three, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's bring on our guy, Andrew Mason. Mace on the case, Mace hoping to relax a little bit. Combine is always a whirlwind. It's an avalanche. It's a flood of information and emotion. So I trust you're doing good on this Monday, hopefully relaxing a little bit after a busy week in Indy.
Well, it's a flood of a lot of things. I wouldn't say it's a flood of emotion. I mean, if anything, it lends itself to some of the least emotional stuff that you get, because it's all the data from what John Fox would call the underwear Olympics. And sometimes that can be a data point that illuminates or misleads depending on how you view it. The right way to view what you get from the Combine, it's twofold. Number one, what teams get from interviews, that can definitely be illuminating if you're asking the right kinds of questions, probing in the right way. As far as the on-field workouts, the most public thing that everybody sees, it's a very small part of the puzzle. What that should do is, if there's a surprising number in the positive side, for example, that
right,
maybe it causes you to say, okay, take a look at the film and say, oh, why didn't that manifest at the college level? Was there something going on, a disconnect from coaching, that sort of thing? And if a player has a bad combine, then it's okay. Were they injured? Did they just have a bad day? What kind of happens here? But maybe if other teams decide the film is good, the combine was bad, and that slips, it gives the chance for perhaps some steals. Some of the great draft steals have come when a player did fall because of the workout, and a team said, well, we're not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe there. We're still gonna pick the guy because the film and everything else shows this guy can play.
Yeah, and that's all that matters is a college film. So Mace, before we jump into the three specific positions and players within those positions, I asked something very delicately because I love the Combine. I wish I was there with you this year. I've complained about it enough on the radio, so I apologize to those that have to listen to me to complain. Did the Combine jump the shark a little bit? I don't like Carson Beck getting booed. I don't like the overreaction, the Tate 40, and then the agent said, well, he's actually really not that slow. And I can't stand the overreaction. Maybe that's where the flood of emotion comes from, because I get angry. Because these are kids, it's their job. This is a job interview. We don't need fans in the stands booing a guy when he's out there in a job interview. None of us would want that in our day-to-day lives. I don't like the agents trying to control, well, actually his 40, we'll see it at the pro day. If you have a bad 40 at the Combine, you can fix it at your pro day. And for me and for you and for evaluators, it's all about the film anyway. So maybe I'm a little bit... I don't know, lack of a better term, pissy about the overreactions we're seeing from the Combine. It seems worse than ever, dude.
Yeah. Overreactions have long been a thing, but I think I get what you're saying on that. The booing of Carson Beck, we've actually seen that kind of coming over the last few years as fans have been able to watch workouts, and clearly there are players who are of regional interest that get louder cheers than others.
Right. Wasn't JJ cheered when you and I were there watching quarterbacks throw? Am I misremembering that?
Well, he was Michigan guy, right? And so you had a lot of Michigan fans that came down. When the year of Anthony Richardson coming in there, even though he wasn't a local guy, he went to Florida, you had a lot of Colts fans there that were hoping he'd be the guy. And so right. Colts fans were very excited. Anytime Anthony Richardson did something good, the place went wild because they were hopeful. And then, of course, now if you ask a Colts fan about Anthony Richardson, you'll get a completely different response. Today's today's savior is tomorrow's trash. That's just
Right.
Unfortunately, that's just how it is. The Carson Beck booing, it was ridiculous though. I mean, because it's all the Indiana fans going back to the national championship game and all that. It's like, oh, I mean,
you guys won.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't lose the game, you won.
Right.
I mean, what are you booing him for? You beat him. Like, it was on. And I thought to myself, if there are going to be people in football operations around the league, GMs and assistant GMs and coaches, that are going to say, oh, this is why we shouldn't have fans there. This is why people shouldn't be able to watch this. And that genie's not going back in the bottle.
No.
But because they've turned it into an event. I mean, there's, what were there, like 18, 20,000 people there or something like that? It's crazy.
Fan experience.
Yeah, like that's gone. That's gone. But it did jump the shark a little bit, but at the same time, what could revive the combine and get more players working out is the fact that it is public and it does build buzz in the social media sphere. People are talking about Kenyon Sadiq.
Woo.
Okay. People are talking about Mike Washington. Now, Sadiq probably didn't need the buzz. He was already tight end 1, but now this is, his name is on the tips of everybody's tongues. But for someone like Mike Washington Jr., now people are talking about him. So for him working out, I mean, it gave him a huge boost. You don't get that sort of resume boost if this thing isn't so public and there aren't fans in the stands and it isn't on NFL Network and everyone isn't able to watch. So like that's what I mean when I say the fact that it's public is the one thing that if the NFL wants to get more players working out, because that still remains something of a point of consternation from a league perspective.
Right.
It's the fact that for a lot of these guys, hey, it's a chance to show off. And it's the one thing that could potentially revive it and get more players to actually show their stuff at the combine in Indianapolis or wherever it ends up being in the next several years if the NFL follows through on its rumblings about moving it, which would be a mistake because the centralized nature of everything in Indianapolis, you're not going to be able to replicate that anywhere else.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's all about creating a viral moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that at the scouting combine, the gauntlet as a wide receiver. The broad jump can be somewhat viral if it's huge. Obviously, passing drills, that's where you can hit social networking, build that buzz for your agent who's going to help you out if you run a slow 40 anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if you have a bad day, like you say, you got a chance to make up for it. You go out at your pro day and put it this way, there's more to gain than to lose, because if your film is good and you interview well, the combine workout, it might make you slip a bit, but it won't have you slip but so far, because there are enough teams that are going to look past that. I mean, I know we were going to start by talking about tight ends, but just to kind of focus on a guy with whom the Broncos spoke last Friday, and that's Emmett Johnson. He felt he interviewed very well with the Broncos. If the Broncos agreed with that, they're going to look more at that, and they're going to look more at his film, and they're going to look a lot more at his pass catching ability, because he's a very refined pass catcher, than the fact that he had a bad day running the 40 on Saturday. That's those data points, those items on his CV are going to be much more important than what he did in the underwear Olympics, as John Fox likes to say.
Yeah, thank you, John Fox, for so many things. But let's do it. Let's kick it off with a guy. You've already seen us talk about him. You know what you're going to see. You're going to see Kenyon Sadiq right there, Oregon tight end. You see the big O. You see him out there as that receiving weapon. And what he did at the combine was absolutely phenomenal, and some of the best numbers that we've seen at that tight end position, Mason, like 20 years? Whatever the number is, we know it's been a while since we've seen a tight end test in the way that Kenyon Sadiq did. So my question to you is merely this. 30 was always going to be a push anyway. I personally don't think he was ever a 30. But now is like, it's 20. I still think Carolina at 19. Like, is he just cemented with that combine performance as a top 20 pick? He already was, in my opinion. But as far as like trying to sneak him through, you can move up to 22. Like, I don't see that now after the combine. Mace, how about you?
I mean, I'd been thinking 20s as in like 23, 24, 25.
Okay.
439 though on 241 pounds is hard
Real
to
nice.
It's hard to ignore. And it's not like he doesn't have film either. It's not like he doesn't have a good season. And oh, by the way, he's a willing blocker. The question then becoming, how much does that willingness translate when he's at 241? And how much of the speed will he keep if long term you're adding 5 to 8 to 10 pounds because you want to get more in line work out of him long term? That I think is going to be an interesting thing going forward. But it also goes back to the immediate impact that he could have on the Broncos if they moved up to get him, and that is like he could be a seam ripper. And at that speed, there's not many ideal defensive matchups that you can have against him. And that's, I mean, you'd have to trade up, but is that a trade you're willing to make when you're a team that is very, very close, and adding that kind of weapon can maybe push you over depending on what you do here in the next 10 days at the start of free agency? I mean, that's a fair question for the Broncos to ask, and what you'd be willing to sacrifice to move up and get him, and whether that sacrifice be worth it or not. I ask you, Cease, let's say it required going up to pick 18. What would you give up to move up to the 18th slot to get Kenyon Sadiq? What do you think would be a fair price?
Off of what I believe it was Jordan Schultz. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. But Jordan Schultz just suggested that Ben Powers could be someone the Broncos would be looking to trade. I know that has hit the news cycle, I believe, just today is that hit about Ben Powers. So it's like, okay, it may not be the picks, and, you know, forget them picks is what I'll say to clean it up for YouTube purposes. But like, if it is picks, fine. You know, what would it be? We can look at the Jerry Jones map. But for me, I'm also considering players, and maybe a guy like Ben Powers would do that.
Well, let me give you a team. Let me give you Detroit at 17, because they just let Graham Glasgow go. Okay.
Right.
And you see, they obviously got an offensive lineman back, but this is a team that's looking to kind of reshuffle its line a little bit and looking to fortify, and could be interested in a guy like Ben Powers, who doesn't have much left on his contract, right? And could be interested in a move down that allows them to bolster their line and maybe add an extra pick. So the difference between pick 17 and pick 30, if you're going by the there are 3 different value charts. We're just going to use the Jimmy Johnson value chart here, the old one. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's 330 points of difference, which is the equivalent of the 57th pick. Broncos, of course, have pick 62 in round number 2. So if you threw Ben Powell, and again, you usually have a premium to move up in round 1. So you don't necessarily want to sacrifice your second round pick, but I mean, does a fair deal and that involve Ben Powers maybe look to you like Powers and a second round pick, and then maybe you get a I'm looking at Detroit's draft picks here. Let me see what they have here. Maybe you get a 4th round pick back, pick 118. So you know how George Payton likes to leave with as many picks as he walked in with, right? And so you still, if you do that, you lose your second round pick, yes, but you move up to 17. You probably put yourself in very good position for Sadiq at 17, and you still would then have 4 picks inside the first 120. They would be clustered at 94, 108, and 118. But that cluster allows you to move up substantially in round 3 if you want to as well. You still have that flexibility. You'd hate losing that second round pick if you did that, but you'd be able to keep your day 2 flexibility. And oh, by the way, you wouldn't have to sacrifice a future first round pick, because otherwise Detroit may say, okay, we'd move down 13 picks. And if there wasn't a player involved, they may say, okay, first round pick next year. And believe me, the Broncos really don't want to give up a future first round pick. They're looking over the horizon. They would like somebody who could, move the needle and make them better right now. But at the same time, George Payton certainly does not want to sacrifice a future one to do it. I think he's done with sacrificing future ones.
Right.
If it's up to
that.
him.
We're good on that.
Sean Payton's a little more willing to do that in his history, going back to New Orleans. George, on the other hand, is the balance who's like, well, maybe not do that. And with Alex Palczewski, a restricted free agent, you have somebody who can step in and start, and then you can fortify the depth there. Probably with one of those mid-round picks, go get yourself an interior offensive lineman who's the next guy that you're developing.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, they got in the David Montgomery deal, there was a 4th involved, right? So they just ship off of David Montgomery. They get some picks back. They're already, Ben Powers, 30, give him 17 and a 4th. They just got another 4th from David Montgomery. So there you go. I think there's multiple ways to look at this. There's multiple ways for the Broncos to move up. It's not all about surrendering picks. And I, like you and like George Payton, I don't want to surrender next year's first.
Yeah, Detroit doesn't have a 3rd round pick. So, I mean, that's what I've kind of would have preferred here.
Okay.
So you can't really do that. I mean, so maybe it's a 4th, and maybe you get another pick later on. Maybe you get Detroit to throw in a pick next year just to kind of make up for that, because a truly balanced deal would probably include a 3rd if we were really kind of trying to make this work. And again, Ben Powers does have value as well. But what Ben Powers is really doing is taking the idea of not having to give up your first round pick in 2027 off the table. That's the big piece of the puzzle here. And then the rest of it is kind of balancing some things out going forward. But the big value is that, and understand this, Powers, going into, there were void years on his deal, but effectively this is the last year of his contract, and he is coming off of an injury. So you have to understand his value isn't as high as you'd like it to be right now. I mean, he is going into year 8, I believe, because he came here in 2023, year 5. So this is year 8. He's coming off of an injury that cost him roughly half the season. And he has one more year left on his deal. So if you don't get him extended, he could be something of a short timer. So his value isn't going to be exceptionally high, but having him in there means instead of talking about next year's 1 in a deal, you're talking about this year's 2. And that, I think that alone is pretty massive, and I think pretty significant in this type of hypothetical deal we're talking about. And then getting a 4th back from the Lions, means you walk out with the same number of picks as you had before, and you're feeling pretty good about that, because there's some quality going into pick 120, pick 125, and you'd be able to get somebody who'd help you. So you're going to be okay with that.
You're going to be okay with that. George Payton would be okay with that. Broncos country, let us know in the comments section down below. Would you be okay with that? Moving up into that top 20 for one, Kenyon Sadiq. Let's do this then and talk about the guy, Mace. One nation under hog. You see it because it's Mike Washington. You saw him down at the Senior Bowl, Mace. We've talked about him before, but now let's jump into a guy that had a combine performance. We knew he was fast. Brother, I didn't think he'd be the fastest back at the combine at 225.
Yeah, 223 to be exact, and 433.
Oh my
I mean,
God, dude. That's craziness.
okay.
I love it.
How fast was Christian Okoye back in the day?
Okoye was pretty fast, pretty big, pretty physical.
The Nigerian Nightmare. I mean, he was big. Like he was 253, so he was bigger. He wasn't that fast, so I mean, but anytime you're getting north of 220 and you're talking about I mean, if you're north of 220 and you're like 4'4", right?
Oh yeah.
4'5".
Anything under 4'5".
Yeah, I mean, you're ecstatic. I mean, that was that made you say, "Holy cow!" So the thing is, and we've talked about this. I mean, he runs decisively. He runs with power, and now you see that he's got some explosiveness to him and some speed. So, again, compliment to R.J. Harvey, right? I mean, it's worth thinking about. The question now is, how far does he drop? Unfortunately, you can't have everybody, because I think that time probably means he's not there late in the third round, which means if you make this type of deal that we talked about with Kenyon Sadiq just now, you're probably not getting Mike Washington Jr. You can't have everything.
Right.
So,
but did you already go out, and we're going to learn with a potential transition tag tomorrow, and when we do this show, the deadline will be passed for that tag. Did you already get a Breece Hall, which then takes you out of a Mike Washington conversation? But I do love this conversation because I love the idea of that power and speed on the field for the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought he'd run. I didn't think 4.33. I thought he'd run in the 4.5 somewhere, which would be fine. I mean, that's good.
On film, he showed speed, but not 4.3.
Yeah. And the thing that it causes you to do is to go back and look at the film and say, like, wow, okay, does it really manifest? I mean, think about it. We've been talking about Jadarian Price as somebody who's got some speed, and he ran 4.49 at 2:03, and Mike Washington ran 4.43 at 2:23. I mean, so it's like, okay, it's when I talk about good or bad, this is the sort of number that makes you go and take a second look and say, okay, how did this manifest? And maybe we didn't quite see it. Like, it'll make me sit down and watch a bit more Mike Washington this week once we get past the transition / RFA deadline and kind of get all the accounting taken care of there, because I want to see what I was missing, because I didn't see 4.33 speed in him watching him before. I mean, didn't see it on film, didn't see it at the Senior Bowl. What I saw is a guy who is decisive, and he hits the hole authoritatively. And I didn't see, I mean, this is like watching Chris Johnson like 15, 16 years ago. If we're talking about 4.33, that he's just running away from people. If he has that sort of straight line speed and it manifests in a game, then he's got corners chasing him and he's gaining ground on him. If this is actually true.
Yeah. Teams will go back and give it another look. And that's what a great performance does. We'll get to Emmett Johnson in just a little bit. But like for me, I look at Mike Washington and I go, it probably moves him into the late second, early third. I was asked by someone on Twitter, like, hey, does this replace Jonah Coleman? No. Jonah Coleman's my favorite back in this class. And that's all due respect to Jeremiah Love, who's pretty much Jahmyr Gibbs. But I love Jonah Coleman. I love his fit for the Broncos at 30, provided they don't move up for Kenyon Sadiq. But it doesn't move Mike Washington, for me, up the board in front of Price, in front of Love, even in front of those Penn State backs. I still think he goes behind, maybe not Singleton because he's coming off that injury, but like this moves him up. But I don't think it moves him up like into the first round conversation. Could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think he goes from like a third round pick to probably a late second, early third round pick.
Well, if you move anybody up that far based on the combine, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, not everyone's draft board is set, but teams have more of an idea what their draft board is going to look like than you realize at this point. Now, what's happening at the combine and what happens over the next few weeks is this is where kind of the coaches really start to kind of put their stamp on what the board looks like in terms of them getting to know more about these guys than they did before. And the coaches going, not only meeting with the players at the combine, but also getting out to the pro days and having conversations and all that. And then, watching the film and saying, okay, we're trying to distill down to, okay, these are the best fits. These are the best fits. This is how I've got them stacked working with George Payton and his staff. And that's how you end up kind of that's how you get the board set. You get it set by position, and then you get the overall board set and that sort of thing. So that's really kind of what happens. That's really what happens now. Now, one of the things that George and his staff have done, and now that you have a coaching staff in year 4, it helps. They generally know what types of players Sean Payton and company are looking for. So they're able to kind of tailor their scouting to what the coaches want. But at the same time, the thing that they don't quite know, the variable, is just kind of the repartee, the back and forth, the personality fit. That's something that you start to get a kind of a read on when you sit down with them at the combine, when you have phone conversations, Zoom interviews, when you have interactions at pro days and that kind of thing. That's sort of the final piece of the puzzle here. And then, if there's one guy you're like, boy, I have a really good feeling about him, it just seems like, I'm gonna sound like George Payton talking about Justin Stern and Alex Singleton. That guy's a Bronco.
They're
right?
Broncos. What are we doing here?
Yeah. And we got to get him somehow, and that you find the guy, or you find the guy that you call your pet cat. RJ Harvey was their pet cat last year, as George referred to again last week. And so there you go.
Do they have a type at linebacker? As we wrap up today's program, and some of our biggest takeaways from the combine is it seems like they're taking a linebacker. We've wanted them to for years. And for years, they've passed on any of the Devons that have come out. Like they keep passing on linebackers. It seems like this year, Mace, that is going to change. Hopefully it's your guy, Jacob Rodriguez, because of his sweet mustache and, of course, his game on the field. This is the class to take a linebacker, and I do not want them to ignore it in the way that they did tight end. All apologies to Caleb Bloner late, but this class is really good. Really good. Take a linebacker.
Really good and really deep. I mean, the thing with Rodriguez, if you don't take him in round 1, you might have to move up in round 2 to get him, because he may not be sitting there at 62 based on the way he appeared to impress people. I'm not talking about the workout. I'm talking about just meeting last week. And I'm not surprised that he impressed everybody there. That he was impressing people down in Mobile in late January. But it's the combination of the film, it's the combination of speaking with him, getting a sense for his football IQ. The film shows the kind of instincts he has. And then specifically for the Broncos, when you hear Sean Payton talk about, okay, we got to get more takeaways, he fits the bill because he gets the ball out. That's
the guy that gets them.
Yeah. And that's something, that is a differential advantage for him here compared to some of these other inside linebackers. He has better instincts for getting the ball out and better. And, that little punch that he's got, that's something.
Got the peanut punch.
Yeah. Yeah, Charles Tillman, right? Like that. That's something that that's a tool. That's a club that not many of these guys have in their back,
right?
To that degree. And I mean, shoot, you put him out there and he's punching the ball out. I mean, that's for all we know right now, that's worth a win right there for the Broncos next year, just by itself. You know, regardless of anything else that goes out there. So you don't want to get too caught up in how these guys can help the Broncos right away. You want to get the best guys, and you want to kind of keep building and keep, always keep laying the foundation, always, keep getting the best guys in. But at the same time, when you are in a window like the Broncos are, you do need to think in terms of skill set and fit that can have a role and help you right now. Like last year, they got an awful lot out of RJ Harvey. They got an awful lot out of Jeremy Crawshaw, and they got, for a 3rd round pick, they got above average value out of Pat Bryant. You can read more in my piece at denversports.com about what they got value-wise out of their picks. Unfortunately, they got less than they should have gotten out of the number 20 pick, Jahdae Barron. It's no fault of Barron's. It's that he wasn't dumped into a crowded room, and they got ditto for crowded rooms, much less out of Savion Jones, much less out of Q Robinson. So something that that the Broncos probably need to kind of be thinking about is what's going to allow them to get the most out of who they bring in this year, because, and it can lead you to the best. It can lead you to the best players, but if you've got kind of 2 guys that are very close to each other, a tie-breaking factor probably is who helps you potentially get that little bit extra to push you over right now.
How can they get that little bit extra, and which positions? I have a feeling George Payton is in one, cat's pajamas, cat's meow. I'm not exactly sure which one, but something, since he loves pet cat. The Broncos could move up. The Broncos could move back. The Broncos could trade picks. The Broncos could trade players. Like, you can't really pin them down as to, everyone's saying the Chiefs are going to take Jeremiah Love. Okay. They're pinned down a little bit. With the Broncos, it's like, I could see him moving up in the 1st. I could see him moving out of the 1st. And I think that's great for George Payton, because no one can really guess or anticipate what you're going to do. A lot of options for this team. A lot of options.
Well, as John Fox said, another Foxy quote, you can consider everything or you can consider nothing.
Oh, thank you for turning my Monday around, Mace. This was
You're welcome. Were you having a bad day today?
I was having a little bit of a bad day, and of course, doing this show, being in our boxes, it got me right. You got me right with these Foxisms.
All right, I appreciate that. I was not having a good day either. So
all right, well, we're having a good day together, and that's what we do on Orange and Blue today. We need some help from everybody out there on our YouTube channels to support Denver Sports YouTube and Orange and Blue today. Mace, how can folks do just that?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss vid.
That's right. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I am at Cecil Lammey saying OBT is a what? Yeah, that's right. It's a BFD. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, and would you please, as always, stay frosty